So we've all heard of this terrible story of this 10-year-old girl who was a U.S. citizen who was deported to Mexico after having brain surgery for brain cancer, and who was on her way to a routine appointment when she and her parents were detained, right? So I want to provide some background that I think has been missed about how this can happen. How can her parents be detained and deported so quickly? And also just, what we can do moving forward. So one thing I think that is missed, and I'm not saying that this is an excuse at all by what the administration has done, but a really important piece here is that her parents had been living in the United States with a prior removal order. And so what this means is that when they were traveling back and forth between checkpoints, okay, they had a deportation already and were still in the U.S., hadn't left. They were just allowed to cross through these checkpoints and present because they lived in Rio Grande, Texas, and I think the appointments were in Houston, right? They had to go through an immigration checkpoint. When they passed through, they would show medical documents, I think attorney letters and other documents, and the ICE officers or CBP officers kind of had the discretion to let them pass through. And they had let them through up until the beginning of February, right? Shortly after Trump took office. And at that point, if you recall, there were different priorities for removal. One of the priorities that the Trump administration now said was a new priority for removal were people who had prior orders of removal. So typically, if you hadn't committed a crime and you had these other factors, maybe you weren't a huge priority for removal. Your check-ins with ICE, you weren't going to be detained necessarily, right? ICE said Trump said if you have a prior deportation order, we're going to just remove you. That's why they didn't have the opportunity to fight the case in front of the judge, because you would say, hey, they've been here for so long, they have a U.S. citizen daughter who clearly has extenuating circumstances. This is a perfect case for what's called cancellation of removal, right? For people who have been here for over 10 years and have a U.S. citizen family member who would suffer kind of extreme and unusual hardship if, their family members were returned to their home country. And this is, if there's ever a case, it's this one. They weren't afforded the opportunity to present that case because you're only afforded that opportunity if you're placed in regular removal proceedings. But because they already had a previous removal order, they didn't have the opportunity nor really the right to go in front of a judge. So this leads me to my second point. Was it legal that they removed them? Technically, yeah, they followed the rules, right? CBP did in this case. They followed the rules, they removed it. Is it unjust? Yes, and this is why we need immigration reform. There are hundreds of thousands of people living in this country who have prior removal. Some don't even know it. Many don't even know it, okay? They haven't committed crimes. They have U.S. citizen sons and daughters, and they're otherwise contributing to the community. This is the biggest hurdle to overcome in immigration, is parents of U.S. citizens who entered without inspection and who often have removal orders. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. This is legislative action. This is why we need legislative actions. This is where legislative action comes in. This is the conversation surrounding immigration reform that we need to have, because there's absolutely no reason that these parents, absent having committed some crime, right, shouldn't be allowed to stay in the United States. There shouldn't be some mechanism available to stay in the United States with their 10-year-old U.S. citizen daughter with brain cancer.